So, we meet at last. Got a question for you. If I was to give you two catalogs, and they had the same things in them, but different prices, why would you suppose that those two catalogs, if they represent companies that still exist, stay in business respectively? If you're stumped, I tell you that the one catalog is aimed at corporations, businesses, and the other one is aimed at the private homeowner. Ah, you say, of course. A business can afford more for a stapler. It's just pocket change, right? A few pennies compared to what would be, to a private owner, something significant. And so those companies that focus on selling things to big companies can target their prices to the big pockets of the corporate world. But for us little guys, us private consumers, our pockets are much smaller. And so our catalogs, although the stuff might be precisely the same, the prices of that stuff are lower to meet our pockets. But now what happens if you make a catalog for a government? If you've ever worked for a company or in the business office of a company that doesn't do directly, whatever. I mean, if you worked with the books, with the accounting and that kind of stuff, you get all sorts of catalogs for office supply, desks, tables, stuff for air conditioning, you name it. It's the kind of stuff that you could really pick up at Walmart for maybe half the price. But they don't like going to Walmart. They just like ordering it from the catalog because it's aimed at businesses. There's some guy in the what department? What department would that be? Whatever that department's. Accounts payable or something like that. And they would seek out catalogs and seek out stuff that they need. They need tables, fine. It's a $50 table for something that you could have just picked up at whatever. It's the company's money. The company can afford it. It's no big deal. $50 to the company versus $25 to a company is just not that significant. However, to a private person like you or I that go to Walmart and we buy a table for, these are like the fold-out ones, right? A $50 fold-out table versus a $25 fold-out table is significant to us. Well, something real interesting happens when you make a catalog of all the same stuff for the government, because the government has a pocket that is very deep, bigger than any company. In fact, with the Federal Reserve System set up the way it is theoretically infinite. Infinite. Isn't that interesting? They could just print money off. And yeah, wild stuff. So it's potentially, their pocket is very deep. Here's the problem. Say that the government is buying stuff from their catalog, corporations are buying stuff from their catalog, and then the private consumer is buying stuff from their catalog. But say a situation crops up, where a private consumer is forced, because of some kind of emergency, to purchase from one of those different catalogs. Say that if they're forced, for example, to purchase from the business catalog, where they're paying maybe 3 times as much the normal price, or say that they were so unfortunate to choose the government catalog, or be forced to buy something from the government catalog. It'd be huge. The difference would be huge. Now, why would these discrepancies arise? Why is it that when you, and you can do this yourself, go into a business and say, hey, do you have your, your stationery catalog? And they get them. They're fat things. They're just ridiculous. But you go in there and you could buy anything you could possibly imagine a business could need. Everything from like tables to desks and chairs to dining facilities and all sorts of stuff. Look at that and then find the same stuff in Walmart, and you will see this huge discrepancy. Why? We kind of touched on it. It's because a difference in price of that much is not significant compared to what a company can draw from in order to pay for those kinds of products. We experience price changes relative to our pocketbook. If our pocketbook is real big, then a real big jump in price compared to us is not really big of a big deal to someone with a bigger pocketbook, right? The blow is much less if you have more resources to draw from. And indeed, any successful company anyways will always be able to draw off of more resources, more money than just the private individual. Well, then the problem comes when we start introducing legislation that makes the government a player. Now not only is there a private catalog and a corporate catalog, but now there's a government catalog. And the really scary thing about this is that the government itself has a pocket of money that is not only potentially infinite, but the part that's not part of, say, like that Federal Reserve System is actually taxed. You know, where before in a company, their profit margin was based upon their efficiency of being able to provide a needed service to society. If you aren't providing a needed service, like it's a tattoo parlor in, you know, a real sort of conservative little western town, like something I grew up in, maybe not the one I grew up in, no, because that did have a tattoo parlor, you'll go out of business. You're not giving what society wants, you die. However, when you're the government, you have your income assured. You are the only thing in a society that has the appropriate use of coercion in order to get your resources, to get your maintenance, and that which sustains you and your institution, being the government itself. When you start playing with legislation that gets the government to start paying for things that you and I pay for on our scale, from our catalog, suddenly the prices go up. This is precisely what happened when we started doing the Medicare and Medicaid stuff. When you talk about Medicare and Medicaid, check it out. I might be wrong on this, so check me out on this. But you'll see, I'm guessing what you'll see is the prices of health insurance will begin to skyrocket within a few years of that legislation passing, the Medicare and Medicaid stuff. And what it is the government starts buying from our catalog. The company wises up to the idea that they can charge more money, and in theory they should, but that's for a different video. Anyway, they raise their prices, and suddenly the prices get too big for you and I. It would be like going to the corporate catalog and trying to buy something that normally we could afford that now we can't afford anymore, because the primary consumer has a much deeper pocket than you and I. That's why the health insurance specifically, costs so much, because the primary consumer is someone with a much deeper pocket than the private consumer. If you privatize things, privatize companies, that doesn't help, because companies themselves are consumers. And then you'll have, for example, if you privatize insurance companies, then the hospitals will charge more. Then you privatize the hospitals, and then the hospital supply companies will charge more. And you privatize those, and then the business supplies will raise their prices until you where does this lead? You privatize everything? That's communism. Go for it, I guess. Not my country, thank you. But whatever. See what I'm going for? I want to make another video about this, but I'll just sort of leave it at that. And this is Jonathan signing off in defense of the capitalist pigs.